in thinking about this book, kind of from just being in your mind to actually, you know, putting things together on the pages, from your rough draft to going back through it, you know, what does that process look like specifically for you? What were the things that kind of helped you to get into a place where you felt like you could just you know, write and write and write versus some of the times when you might have felt stuck if you did that kind of stuff? I'd just be interested in the process in general.
Sure. I will say writing is hard, and it's not always fun. And even now, I have an article due. I asked for an extension because it's just, I don't have time to do it, but also I procrastinate a lot. It's like exercise. When you don't do it for a long time and then you get on the treadmill or whatever you're going to do, it's really, it's not fun to see how hard it is. But then if you keep doing it more and more and more, it's much easier. So if I, like with this book, I wrote this book in less than a year, but I probably wrote this book in 5 months, but it took me 10 years to sell it. But I was working, I started this book in grad school, and I was working on a completely different book. I was writing about Battle Creek, and I was writing about, do you remember that when there was like a robbery and a murder at the Happy Spa? So I wanted to write about that. I thought it was really exciting, and there was so many things I could write about. It was a Happy Spa, and it was a massage parlor, and guns and sex and drugs, blah. And I was working on that, and one of my writing instructors was like, if you write about this, after you get past the point of like, there was a murder and a robbery and it was a massage parlor, what else are you gonna say? And he had written this book, and he told me, my answers always are like this, and I finally make my way back around. So that's kind of how I write too. But, so he was saying, he wrote a book, a nonfiction book, about a blind man back in the 1700s who was a world traveler. And he said he was doing all this research about this man, and it was really exciting to him that he was a blind man who traveled the world. So he's working on this first chapter, and then he gets to the next chapter, and this little blind man goes to the next port, and he goes to get a hotel room. But he's blind, so he had to keep playing like the but he's blind card. So he was like, well, you know, besides just like the big thing that happens, you have to write about all the other parts that influence that big thing. So like this book, I could easily be labeled as a woman who had an abortion. But when I started writing the book, I wrote as a way of healing, just like vomiting my feelings out onto the page, unfiltered, because I just didn't know else how to process what had just happened. And that story of like meeting Andrew and then up until the point till like we lost the baby and got married, and maybe a few months after we got married, just that little chunk, that was my Buddy's blind, sort of. And then I thought, well, I don't want to just be Buddy's blind or just the abortion lady. So what are all these things in my life that led me to make this decision, that led me to make this decision, that led me to make this decision, this one? So I had to basically just sit there for months, not literally sitting there, but just thinking, what are significant events in my life that made me who I am, and then how do I tell those stories? So after I had the main narrative, I just had like notebooks that said, okay, I really want to write about my mom's restaurant, and why is that important? Because this, and this, and I really want to write about St. Philip or Suzuki, and just pick out these bigger themes, and then under those I would make like more lists of what sections and how do I make this into sort of a chapter, and then then I would go and it looked like I was a crazy person. My wall was just full of like you know when you have a crime investigation, you have like one thread leading to another, and then so that's what my wall looked like. And then that's how I like figured out the structure of what the book was. And then I sat down and sort of started writing a little bit. The writing part is like you have this big hunk of clay and you know what you have to include, and then you start sort of shaving it off. So I don't just go wake up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, and besides looking fabulous, just sit down at my computer and be like, oh, it's just like, it's really messy, and it's like, sometimes it'll take me an entire day to write half a page. And then, you know, it's like constant writing, like if I hear a really cool quote, I'll write it down and save it for something, or so it's all happening at the same time. But besides all the backstory that's in the book that took me a long time, the main narrative, just from finding out I'm pregnant and losing the baby, that I wrote like that because it was totally immersed in it and totally immersed in my grief. And so I wrote it all because I had to kind of process what was happening. And I also, so just as a human, I needed to get that out of my system, but also as a writer I'm writing this for other people, I wanted them to know what exactly happens when you lose someone, because grief is so messy and so unfamiliar, and so I wanted people to know, like, these are the things that go on in your head, and you're not alone when you think all these really weird things. Like the other day, my dog walker from Maine, she told me that she was like being domestically abused, and she called the police, and the guy was arrested and all this stuff, and she was like, I feel really bad. I feel so bad for him. I feel really guilty. And I mean, that sounds crazy, but these are the kind of things that you think when these things happen. So I just wanted to write it all down there too, if that helps. It's so much of writing is not writing. So much of writing is just thinking and trying to sort of solve your own mystery. And like thinking about it until, it's like one of those magic art paintings where you stare at all these images and then this one appears. That's kind of what it is, I think. Does that help? Okay.